Hey, it's Del Jackson. We got a special LLhoops Zoom today. We're going to recap, and I called it the making of a champion. So we're going to talk about Lancaster Mennonite and their run to win the PIAA this year, the AA PIAA at Hershey. So we have with us Coach Jeff Hartenstine, assistant coach, and Coach Seth Buckwalter. How you doing, Coach Jeff? We'll start with you. How you, buddy?
I'm good, bud. Thanks for including me. I'm
Yep.
excited to get started.
All right, Seth, how you been, buddy?
I've been really good, really good. And yeah, I appreciate you doing this for us. This should be fun.
All right, let's start with Jeff because we always get the head coaches on. Let's start with the assistant here. Jeff, tell us what I know you wear many hats because I've covered you guys a lot. But basically, what is your role with the Blazers here? What's your main role from Coach Seth to the team?
Well, I would say main role is I would be Seth's right-hand man. So if that means, as far as our game prep, him and I talking late into the evenings, breaking down film and whatnot, that occurs. Over the summer, especially last year with the group we knew we had coming back, we did a lot of scheduling over the summer to make sure we went down to Philly, Westchester, Allentown, that type of stuff. That was a little bit more than just our standard summer league. So working on those types of things, talking with other coaches to point us in the right direction, and then filling in wherever I might be able to fill in relationship wise with the kids, that type of stuff. And yeah, Seth and I have great working relationships. So long season like that, it was a lot of fun from beginning to the end.
Hey, Seth, let me ask you about goals. I mean, some teams have goals. Some teams do game to game. Some teams have their captain set it. What type of goals or what type of culture do you guys do in the beginning of the year to the end of the year?
Well, once our season or our team is set at the beginning of the season, we have the captain's jersey. We always have the captains pull the players together and figure out formal goals. And so sometimes they're realistic, sometimes they're not. I try to get them to focus on yes, what are some goals in terms of winning games, winning championships, winning whatever. But then also what are the daily actions that it's going to take to get this team to their top spot. And so, the guys come up with a lot of things like never taking plays off, whether it's in practice or in games, and being positive with each other, playing team basketball, just a lot of things like that. But I really like the seniors, the captains kind of drive that. And then periodically I'll bring back up hey, your goals said this, and this is a step towards it, or this was a missed opportunity or whatever. So I'll bring their goals back towards that.
Let's talk about the injury bug this year. We'll start with Coach Jeff. How did you had so many guys in and out of the lineup, at least from my perspective, key guys. How did you guys adjust, adapt, and deal with major injuries to you had Cam, you had David Weaver out for a while. You had so many different guys kind of go down for a while. How did you guys deal with that? Coach Jeff first.
It was I wish I could say it was all really easy to deal with that. It was very taxing to deal with that. So discussions between Seth and I, where I would say, what are we going to do? Seth would always basically kind of reassure me, hey, it's just part of the journey. It's whatever's meant to be is going to happen for us here. So, and he also reminded me that it's a little different than years past, that we've got a pretty deep group that we could go to. So practice wise, we'd start mixing and matching different guys, thinking about different zones where maybe with some trapping things, this athletic guy could fit in, or this hustler could fit in. And lo and behold, it just kind of seemed like some new identities started to form for some of these younger guys that we didn't really know what we had there. And all of a sudden, this guy's starting now, and he's a dominant starter, or this guy is a bench guy we can count on for energy I mean, we had some guys come off the bench that could guard athletic guards, stop them. So some new identities really formed, and some guys matured super fast to help us. But yeah, for 18 games, we didn't have Camden for pretty much 75% of the season. We didn't have another guy, Jaden Taylor, who wasn't with us even at the end of the season when everybody did get healthy. That was our defensive guru and whatnot. So new guys stepped up, and then when guys got healthy, I think we were a better team because the guys had learned so much when the other guys were out.
So, Coach Seth, being an ex-coach, how do you deal with, okay, I got some starters off, and now I got some other guys playing, and now I got those starters back? I mean, what's the mindset talking to the team and talking to the guys that were playing a lot, and now all of a sudden they're not?
Well, I will say that the guys who stepped up, there was times this season where like we were frustrated with injuries, and instead of going into games with guys being like, "Oh man, we got these injuries," whatever, there was these young men coming off who would have been on the bench before. They were just so stinking excited to get playing time that like the amount of energy it gave everybody was unbelievable. It was a big step along the way. But then yeah, as starters started to come back, I think it's helpful. Our starters, they're not this hugely selfish group. And so we have these really good players coming back, and everyone's excited for them to be back. And guys that were going to get reduced time, you're never happy to get less time, but it was like they were excited because the guys that were coming back were people you're happy to have back. They're not like, oh man, now so and so is going to take all the shots, or so and so is never going to pass the ball, or whatever it is. And that makes it pretty easy. I mean, we had Jeff and I had lots of discussions with kids about through the years, through the whole season, about playing time and where they fit in. And sometimes they liked the discussion, sometimes they didn't. But overall, they just responded really well. So,
all right, let's get into the season a little bit. I'm gonna fast forward. We've already dealt with some injuries. You're in Section 4 this year as opposed to Section 5, and Columbia hadn't lost a league game for many years. I think it was 3 and maybe even 4. We had your game. We had the last game with Columbia live stream, and you guys pretty much took them to the woodshed. I mean, that was a game where I know my buddy Andy was like, "What the heck?" I said, "Well, this is what happened. They got up on them and they just kept going." So was that? We'll start with Coach Seth this time. Was that like a turnaround game for your kids, or not necessarily?
Maybe it was. I mean, we knew that every game we were going to get better. That was Cam's second game back, and we knew we were going to get used to him playing each game and get a little better each game. I was a confidence booster. I think at the beginning of the season, what we saw in that game, I think that was what we were anticipating through the season. Like we're gonna be a handful. And then injuries made that a little difficult. And it was a like, hey, like this could be who we are. Like we could be at this level. And so I think it was just it was a confidence booster that we needed. Like we really needed.
Okay, we'll go to Coach Jeff. Coach, so we got this Columbia game. We got, I think it's co-champs, you guys in Columbia. I think you split, I believe. And then we go into the leagues. So I was pulling up some stuff. And then how difficult is it for a Section 4 team to play Section 1 champ? Let's go like that. I mean, obviously, I cover. It's a different. Usually, it's the physicalness is a little bit different. But what type of things were you guys working on or learning from that game, Coach Jeff?
Well, the group we had this year with the size we had with David Weaver and the seniors that we had, Camden now back in the fold. I think we all were pretty confident going into that Hempfield game. And like you said, there's a difference in physicality and there's a difference in size where Hempfield this year, 1 to 5 out in the court, we're all big, all physical, muscular guys. And when we got into that game, it was another reminder of the injuries that we had this year. One, Hempfield is a very, very tough team as they ended up going on and winning the leagues. But we had our starting five together, which was fantastic. And then we immediately went to our 10th man, as you know, our bench was so limited. So in memory of that game, Pena, we knew he was going to be a tough cover. We knew that they were going to run a ton of ball screens for him, and it just wore our guys down, the physicality of it. So I would say as high as we were after that Columbia win, after that game, we were still a confident bunch, but I think we were licking our wounds a little bit after that game because physically we didn't hold up as well as we knew we could hold up against it.
Yeah. I covered Hempfield a bunch this year. Between the T-shirts at Lancaster Mennonite and Hempfield, I have to get some new T-shirts for next year. So that's how much I covered Hempfield as well. And our guy Miguel, he got much better as the season went on. His shooting percentage went up, and as you said, they had a nice little ride there. They weren't very deep, but they were big. Their guards were big. They were really big and strong. Let us talk about the three-peat, the District 3 Antietam showdown. It seems to be an annual thing now. So we live streamed that game. Thanks for the Lancaster Mennonite boosters, and we put that on. And we had a good view, and you guys got lots and lots of views on it, and it's still up on our YouTube page if people want to see it. So this year it seemed to me a little bit different than the last year's as far as what Antietam had as far as height goes. So let's go to Coach Seth. Seth, what's the mindset playing that game? You know, I know each team's different, but I know you had 2 or 3 guys that played 3 games in a row, you know, Antietam 3 times. So what was your mindset going into that game?
I mean, we were confident. We did know it was going to be a different game. The previous 2 times we played them, like they had a guy who could be a scorer, and like you really had to focus in on him. And so preparing for this time was maybe a lot less about what are they going to do, because they didn't just have a dominant score. It was more of a how can we do what we do and do it really well. And so I mean, we were confident going in, but knowing that Antietam played much better team ball maybe this year than they had in previous years, and that has its strength and its weaknesses. But yeah, we felt good going into it. You guys played really well. So.
Good. All right, let's go from that game, three-peat, which was very cool. I got a picture of 2 of the captains going like, you know, 3, and I thought that was a great. I just saw them in the Hershey Arena there, and they were pretty excited. So let's go to the first PIAA game, which my buddy Andy said, this is the game. If they can get by this one, they got a chance to go a long way. So I didn't cover it, but we did have it covered. So let's go to Coach Jeff and tell me about the ending of the game, which I watched on YouTube or somebody's site. You guys were down. You're playing against a great player. You guys are putting points up. You're the home game. Just tell me a little bit, Coach Jeff, about the end of that game.
Well, you know, that was an unbelievable game. Unbelievably emotional game. You know, they were leading their district throughout the season and ended up getting upset by this group of seniors up that way. So I'd like to say that we don't look ahead at all, but we were kind of paying attention to what was happening up there at the end. And the end of that game, it always feels good when you have players that have input in very important huddles. So Seth talks, I occasionally interject something, but when we had the ball at the end there and we were looking to finish that game, Weaver, Hurst, you know, a bunch of those guys decided what play we wanted to run against their zone defense, which we knew they were going to be in. It worked perfect. Weaver got fouled. In years past, I might have had some trouble watching those free throws because of not knowing whether or not he was going to make those. He was so incredibly confident going to the line, knocks down both of those free throws. In between the 2 free throws, we had determined what we were going to do defensively to try to take the ball away from their guy Hill that was just unbelievable. And luckily they inbound the ball, things kind of got erratic and the ball got thrown around. Weaver ends up catching that ball. We win that game. I don't know if I've ever been as happy at a basketball game after winning that game. It was unbelievably relieving to win that game because of all the plans we had for this group, but it felt so good to beat a team because it was such a good game. That was a good team. So we were talking about that Columbia game being a kind of a springboard. That game was a huge springboard because one, we beat a good team with a really good player that, you know, performance for the ages. And two, we had to do so much defensively as far as switching matchups, using zone, trapping, pressing, things like that, where now we got used to some new defenses we were trying out. So we knew if we had to use those on the fly the rest of the playoffs that we now had a little experience with it. So awesome win.
Coach Seth, have you ever had a player go off like that went off against you guys in that game? The Hill's the kid's name. That was the kid's name. I don't know how many points he had. He had a bunch. But have you ever? You've been coaching for a while. You've been assistant coach there. You played at Mennonite. Have you ever seen a performance like that against Mennonite?
I have not. I have not. It was everything he threw at the bucket went in, and then at some point, all we could do, we fouled him. I think every possession down the stretch because we just we couldn't keep him in front of us. It was the best performance, individual performance I've ever seen. It was amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so let's roll into some of the playoff games. It seemed like you guys, after that game, you had a pretty nice draw. We were at a game with Monoy. I heard that was pronounced Monoy and not Mahanoy. So it seemed like in a lot of these games, David Weaver would get in foul trouble. And that was just me. And I'm there like, okay. And then people are like, okay, they're not going to win. I said, no. They're so used to playing, number one, without him earlier in the year. And number two, they just seem to play okay when the big boy isn't there. So let's start with Coach Jeff. Jeff, when David gets those fouls, what's the word on the bench? What are you guys talking about?
Well, maybe a little bit of initial panic. But, as we look down at the bench, we've got a lot of speed that we can bring in. And we're very, very fortunate in the 2A bracket where David is 6'7" and so big, but there's not really usually another 6'7" guy that's matching with him. So normally we can bring in a guy like David Shell, who's incredibly athletic and physical. He can bang with guys and rebound, and we can mix and match some parts. And again, when we lose a guy of that size, there's not really somebody on the bench, but we've got to stress how we're going to group rebound to try to help out with his loss being on the bench and buy some time. And two, we can speed the game up a little bit by doing some trapping, by bringing in some of these guards that really help us get after it and knock the guys off balance.
Nice. Coach Seth, I watch coaches when I go an awful lot when I'm covering games, and I've watched you an awful lot here in the last 3 or 4 years. And you and I've talked about off screen a little bit about adjusting to officials. So when you're in the districts, you're getting different officials. When you're in the PIAA, you're getting different officials. Do you guys talk about that before the game, or you just say, you know what, we're going to get some strange calls? And I saw many strange calls covering the games this year, especially in the districts and in the states. How do you address that with your kids? Because sometimes, Coach, to be honest, there's some really bad calls, and I'm like, okay, how are they going to deal with that? Go ahead, Coach Seth.
I will say our team grew in that area a ton through the year. Where at the beginning of the year we had some games where guys didn't like the calls that were made or not made, and they got extremely emotional. It kind of took over. And so we early in the season had lots of discussions about, like, you have to control what you can control. You can't control the officials. You're never going to get anything good out of, showing up the officials by, flailing arms and whatever. And so the the group got really, really good at managing that as the year went on. And then we did prior to different playoff games, went to individuals and said, hey, you got to figure out, like, are they calling hand checks? Are they gonna what are they calling? What aren't they calling? And figure it out. And again, our guys got good at figuring out what they could and couldn't do. David Weaver, I think, figured out, so we got into playoffs, that how he could make plays on the ball without getting fouls. So many times people came to me after a game and like, how did David not get his fourth foul? Like, he was crazy. He kept blocking shots, and what is he doing? And I'm like, yeah, he figured it out. Like, he's making a play, but not the wrong play. And anyway, so yes, we did discuss it quite a bit, but our team really matured with that as the season went on, and it helped us out.
The final game was interesting. Again, my head writer and I, we were sitting there watching the game, and he thought you guys had a pretty good chance originally when he does the PIAA stuff. Originally, when he was on there, he's like, I don't know, it's the first game, so he got by the first game, and then you kind of you just kind of won. You didn't, you weren't crushing teams, but you weren't getting in those real close games, and then in the championship game, you guys just kind of what you said, Seth, earlier. It says you just kind of did what you did, and you're more worried about what you guys were doing. How important was Cam Hurst in that game? We'll start with Coach Jeff.
Cam's huge. You have high expectations for Camden every game. Camden's very, very even keel as far as his personality and in big moments, but he was huge in that game. Early in the game, Weaver was huge for us. And then as the half ended going into the second half, Cam was great. And a lot of times, it wasn't public, but, he was still kind of getting used to recovering from that hand injury. So with a team like that gets after it and traps and swipes at the ball and is physical, somebody smacks that hand or chops that hand, it takes a little bit of time for the numbness to go away. So he was dealing with a little bit of that stuff during that game, but you wouldn't know it because he's very even keel. So he was great, fantastic, usually fantastic in big moments.
He, I felt every time the game got a little close that he just made a big shot, made a big play. He seemed like a special player that night. And I know David Weaver did a lot of stuff. I want to ask Seth. So this is the first time that Mennonite has done this, and it's the first time for a long time that LL team's done it. Do you think there's advantage, Seth, of playing our district's finals at Hershey and then coming back and playing the state finals? Do you think that's an advantage or not?
Maybe it is. I don't know that I thought about it. I know people have asked me, like, were you nervous? Were the guys nervous there at Hershey and whatever? And I don't know that they were. I don't think that I felt terribly nervous, but part of it was we're going into a place that didn't feel so new and didn't feel, and so that may be an advantage. I mean, I think for LLhoops, most of their team had been there the year before, so it wasn't necessarily a new experience for them either. But it was settling to not be in all of the locker room or the size of the facility or all that kind of stuff. It kind of felt like coming home a little bit.
Nice. Okay, so Blazers win. What type of it's got to be very emotional and exciting, and now it's a month or so later. So what is the feeling looking back at what your season was like? We'll start with Coach Jeff.
It's still pretty surreal. You're reminded of it when people you haven't talked to in 20 years text you, email you out of the blue because they're following you, and it's very special. It's Seth said that, and I've overheard the guys as well talking about the guys that are returning saying, hey, we're going to repeat. And we kind of look at each other a little bit, and a lot of things have to go right to have that happen. And, so it's a little bittersweet. We haven't had to coach a team without Cam Hurst and without David Weaver, Summerall, David Shell in quite a while. So, you look forward to seeing those guys every single year when we start back up. And now those guys are on to bigger and better things. So all in all, it's still surreal. It hits you, during certain conversations and when other coaches come up to you and talk about it and things like that. Watching a replay on PCN when, you catch that late night, you're watching TV or something. But for me, I would say surreal and also a little bittersweet knowing those guys are moving on.
Coach Seth, your thoughts?
I think, man, I agree with that surreal idea. And I think I look back at it, and as he said, and as I've said a bunch, like so many things have to go right to get to that spot. And there's a lot of, when I think back to it, it's just really humbling. I think just because we're a missed foul shot away from losing in the first round of states, where these guys dug in and they made everything happen. And you look back at the season and you have to wonder if Cam's healthy all season, do we not win a state title, but we win 6 other games during the regular season? Like, just so many things you look back and you're like, we feel like the Lord really had his hand on everything that happened, and it all had a purpose. And we tried to keep that perspective in the middle of it all, that like, hey, everything's happening for a reason, just ride it out, see where it goes. And now when you look back at it, it's like, wow, okay, like, yeah, this played out the way it was supposed to.
I just want to share with you guys that I really enjoy, number one, watching your teams play, and then I enjoy talking to your kids after the game. So they're so, I don't know, they're just really good kids. They always say the right things. They buy into the team effort, and it's very cool for me to talk to your teams. The other thing that I find interesting as an ex-coach and as a reporter and whatever the heck we're doing here at LLhoops is I always see Seth early. This year I didn't, but for whatever reason, I always see your teams early, maybe against Trinity or against somebody. And I'm keeping track of the turnovers, and I can guarantee in the first couple of weeks there'll be 20 in that, and I don't have to keep them. But your guys get better, and I know that that's a product of coaching. You're taking a lot of different pieces and guys that want to play, and you're trying to figure out some things. And I'm going to say that you guys do a great job coaching from beginning to end, and the improvement shown to me is pretty impressive. It really is. So whatever you guys are doing, I hope you do it next year. I hope to see Antietam 4 or Steel High 4 or whoever the heck shows up. But we will be covering you. So any last thoughts here from Coach Jeff and Coach Seth? We're going to put this on the website a little bit later on today.
Well, last thing I'll say is, winning this state championship, I feel like I should tell you, Dale, afterwards, you're so locked in to who are you playing next? What film are we watching next? That it was like a feeling in the locker room afterwards, like, oh my goodness, there's nobody left. There's no more tape to watch. There's no more long nights to do it. So you get so locked in for so many months. Now and Seth's in the same boat. Now you're back home with your family, your kids. It's just this. It's crazy to change because you're so invested in it while the run's happening.
Yeah, Coach Seth, final thoughts.
Just a thank you to you, Dell and LLhoops, and we play these teams from all over the state, and there's no county that gets the coverage like Lancaster does, between Lancaster Online and you with LLhoops, and it just we are so blessed to have you, and to have the coverage that we get, because it makes it really special for these guys when they've got access to games on YouTube that you guys cover, and they've got all these articles written about them, and it just, anyway, we're super appreciative, because these kids get a better experience playing in Lancaster County than they would in other counties, which is great. So
Well,
thank you.
One thing we worry about is that big head. I'm sticking a microphone in the kids, and I'm like, this kid's a 10th grader. I'm afraid he's going to say something not good, and then it's like, what do? I don't put it up. but your kids have always been good. Hey, thank you guys. I'm going to put this up today. We'll put our interview up, links to the games, couple pictures of players at a game, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Del.
And we will see you in the future. Thank you, guys. Congratulations as well.
Thanks, Del.
You know,
Thank
the 50th book was out this year, and I'm fighting myself. I probably will. We'll probably put Andy's story in there, maybe online only, but there's a lot of pieces, but I really want to put something in there. So thank you, guys, and enjoy it, and keep the ball rolling. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Del.
See you, buddies.